Step into your greatness, let it shine oh so bright. I am worthy VIP, gonna take you to new heights. Turn the volume up, let's ignite your soul's delight. Join the journey now, everything gonna be alright. Hey, hey, you know you're worthy all day.
You know that feeling when your mind is just racing, like you're trying to juggle a dozen thoughts, maybe replaying old arguments or worrying about what might happen next. It can be pretty exhausting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's like our minds become these kind of holding pens for all sorts of stuff. And sometimes we forget how to, open the gate and let some of it go.
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today, the art of letting go.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a really interesting pair of resources here, an audiobook transcript and an ebook, both from Nick Trenton. Seems they're packed with practical insights drawn from psychology, neuroscience, mindfulness, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And our goal is really to kind of distill the essence of these ideas for you. We want to pull out the most actionable strategies and maybe even a few surprising perspectives on how you can find more peace, more mental clarity, and, well, real emotional strength just by learning to release what's weighing you down.
Okay, so letting go, it sounds good, right?
Yeah.
But where do we even start? What's the first key, maybe?
Well, a really foundational idea that both sources emphasize is the Stoic principle. It's known as the dichotomy of control.
Dichotomy of control.
Yeah. The ancient philosopher Epictetus, he put it really well. He basically said, some things are within our power while others are not.
Right. Okay, that rings a bell. So what exactly did he mean by within our power versus not within our power?
Basically, what's within our control are our own internal states. So our opinions, our choices, our desires, our aversions, and really crucially, our own actions.
Okay.
On the other hand, things outside our direct control, well, that includes our bodies, to some extent, our possessions, what other people think of us, our reputation, our social status, our job title, and pretty much all external events, things that just happen to us.
Okay, yeah, I can see the distinction. But how does consciously recognizing this difference actually help us in letting go of things?
Well, the real power lies in where we direct our energy. You see, when we focus on what we can influence, our own thoughts, our own actions, we start to cultivate this sense of inner peace and resilience.
I mean, think about it. How much mental energy do we waste trying to change things that are simply beyond our reach?
Oh, that's so true. Yeah. I think of all the times I've stressed about something I ultimately had, like, zero say in. The audiobook had a great example about a student, didn't it?
Yes, exactly. It used the scenario of a student getting ready for an exam. So the student has direct control over, how much they study, their level of focus while studying, how they manage their time.
Right.
These are all squarely within their power, but they can't completely control the specific questions that'll be on the exam or the exact grading criteria or even, how they might feel physically or mentally on the day of the test itself.
So the wisdom is to pour your energy into the studying, the part you can control.
Exactly.
Rather than fixating on the uncontrollable outcome, like the final grade.
Precisely. And the ebook has shared this compelling story about a person named John. John realized that his tendency to constantly kind of ruminate about past mistakes and obsess over what-if scenarios was really holding him back.
Yeah, preventing him from moving forward in life, enjoying his relationships. He came to understand that true strength wasn't about trying to manipulate every single external factor, but about having the wisdom to see what he could actually influence.
And what did John shift his focus to then?
Well, he made a conscious decision to let go of his need to control, external events, other people's opinions, even their little quirks. Instead, he actively focused on being fully present right here, right now, accepting situations as they happened, cultivating empathy for others, and staying true to his own core values and commitments. It was a shift from trying to control the outside world to really nurturing his inner self.
So it's almost like trading the illusion of external control for the reality of internal power.
Precisely, yeah. The Stoics, including Epictetus, they believed in this fundamental rational order governing the universe. They often called it the logos.
Logos, right.
Yeah. It wasn't necessarily about a god in the way we might think today, but more about a belief that there's an underlying reason and purpose to things, even if we don't always get it. And this belief system, it allowed them to accept what they couldn't control, kind of trusting in this larger order.
It's a very philosophical way to look at it. How does that translate down to our everyday personal struggles with letting go.
Well, on a practical level, it just reinforces the idea that our genuine power, our real power, resides in our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions.
Oh.
So by actively cultivating a rational and virtuous mindset, we can achieve a greater sense of inner peace, inner stability, regardless of what's happening outside.
Right.
It's about building like an internal fortress that isn't easily shaken by external stuff.
The audiobook also mentioned Epictetus's ideas about the faculties of the mind. What were those? How do they fit in?
Right, yeah. Epictetus emphasized that we experience the world through three key mental faculties.
Huh?
Judgment, how we interpret and evaluate things.
Mm-hmm.
Desire, our urges, what we long for. And will, our intentions, what we actually choose to do. He believed that living a fulfilling life meant using these faculties wisely, in harmony with reason.
So like if our desires are always pulling us towards things we can't control.
Exactly. Like needing other people's approval, it's going to be much harder to find peace and let go of those external dependencies. So cultivating sound judgment helps us see things more clearly, balance desires stop us from constantly chasing what we don't have, and a strong will lets us focus on our own actions and values.
So applying the dichotomy of control isn't just like passively accepting fate. It's an active, ongoing mental discipline.
Exactly right. It involves this continuous process of self-awareness,
Yeah.
constantly asking ourselves, is this situation, or maybe my reaction to it, is this within my control?
Right.
If the answer is yes, well, then we take thoughtful action. If it's no, we practice acceptance. And if it's, partially within our control.
Which happens a lot.
Yeah, it does. Then we focus our efforts on the controllable bits and learn to release our attachment to the rest. Let it go.
The sources gave some really clear, like everyday examples of this. Like being stuck in traffic, that's a classic.
Right. You can't control the traffic jam itself, getting angry, honking your horn. It's not going to make it disappear, is it?
Nope, definitely not.
But you absolutely can control your reaction. You could choose to get frustrated and stressed out. Or you could decide, okay, I'll listen to an interesting podcast or make a hands-free call or just practice some deep breathing. You choose your response.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you get a lower grade than you hoped for, you can't go back and change it, but you can control how you respond. You can analyze what maybe you could have done differently, adjust your study habits for next time.
Okay. What about Tim, the manager dealing with those project delays?
Yeah, Tim couldn't magically fix the underlying technical issues causing the delays that was, outside his direct control. But he could control how he communicated the situation to his team, to stakeholders, how he prioritized the remaining tasks, his efforts to find potential solutions or workarounds. His power was in managing the situation responsibly, not just wishing the tech problems away.
And Samantha, the freelance writer, waiting to hear back on her proposal.
Right. Samantha's control basically ended when she submitted her best possible proposal and followed up professionally. The client's final decision, who else applied, their budget, all that stuff was outside her sphere of influence.
So just focus on your part.
Exactly. By focusing on the quality of her work and her professional conduct, she maintained a sense of agency and, reduced her anxiety about the eventual outcome. It's about investing your energy where it actually yields a return in your own efforts.
Okay, so the dichotomy of control gives us a framework, a place to focus our energy. But when it comes to those things outside our control, how do we actually begin to, let go of our attachment to them? It sounds easier said than done.
It really does. And a fundamental part of that process is learning to focus on the present moment, right here, right now, rather than getting caught up in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future.
Okay.
Both sources strongly emphasize the practice of mindfulness as a crucial technique for cultivating this present moment awareness.
Mindfulness.
Yeah.
It's such a buzzword these days, isn't it?
Yeah.
What does it really boil down to in this context for learning to let go?
Well, at its core, mindfulness is just the practice of intentionally paying attention to the present moment, but with a specific attitude, one of curiosity, openness, and non-judgment.
Non-judgment, okay.
Yeah. Think of it as training your mind to become more aware of your current thoughts, your feelings, physical sensations, without getting carried away by them or immediately labeling them good or bad. This helps us anchor ourselves in the here and now, which reduces the power of past hurts and future worries. And interestingly, research actually suggests that regular mindfulness practice can lead to structural changes in the brain, like increased gray matter in areas linked to self-awareness and emotional regulation.
Wow, that's fascinating. The audiobook gave a really practical example, didn't it, about putting mindfulness into a morning routine. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. Imagine starting your day, but instead of immediately grabbing your phone, yeah, many of us are. Instead, take a few deep breaths. Just notice the sensations in your body as you wake up. As you get out of bed, pay attention to the feeling of your feet on the floor, the temperature of the air on your skin.
Okay.
While you're brushing your teeth, really focus on the taste of the toothpaste, the physical movement of your arm, the sensation of the bristles. Even during your shower, bring your attention to the feeling of the water, the scent of the soap.
So just noticing the mundane stuff.
Exactly. The idea is to bring your full awareness to these everyday actions, preventing your mind from immediately jumping to worries or to-do lists. It's a way of grounding yourself in the present, right from the moment you wake up.
That sounds really simple, actually, but maybe powerful. The ebook also talked about body scan meditation. How does that work for focusing on the present?
Right, the body scan. It involves lying down or sitting comfortably and then systematically directing your attention to different parts of your body. Usually, you start with your toes and gradually move upwards all the way to the top of your head.
Okay.
And as you focus on each area, you simply observe any sensations that arise, maybe warmth, coolness, tingling, pressure, or even noticing the absence of sensation. But you do it without judgment, without trying to change anything.
So if I notice like tension in my shoulders, I just notice it. I don't try to immediately relax them.
Exactly. You become a neutral observer of your physical experience. This practice cultivates a really deep sense of bodily awareness and keeps you firmly anchored in the present moment. The ebook provides a detailed guide, suggests finding a quiet, comfortable spot, maybe closing your eyes if that feels okay, taking a few deep breaths first, then just spend a few moments on each body part, noticing whatever's there without analyzing or reacting.
How long does it take?
Oh, it can vary, anywhere from 5 minutes up to maybe 30 minutes or more. It can be a really effective tool for reducing stress, improving sleep, and just deepening your overall mindfulness practice.
So by intentionally focusing on what's happening right now in our bodies and our senses, we become less tangled up in the past, which we can't change anyway,
Right.
and the future, which is uncertain. That makes perfect sense. It's a way to let go of some of that mental baggage. Now, the sources also emphasize thinking without judgment. Why is that so key for letting go?
Well, our judgments, especially the negative ones we aim at ourselves or others, they can create a lot of emotional turmoil. They keep us trapped in these cycles of negativity.
Yeah.
The ebook points out that our opinions are often subjective, right? They don't necessarily reflect objective reality. When we're constantly evaluating and labeling things as good or bad, right or wrong, we're basically adding layers of emotional charge to our experiences.
Okay.
And that makes it much harder to just accept things as they are and let go of our resistance to them.
So if I mess something up and immediately label myself stupid,
Right.
that judgment just amplifies the negative feelings.
Precisely. It creates an immediate emotional reaction, and it can trigger this whole cascade of further negative thoughts and feelings. So learning to observe our thoughts and experiences with a sense of neutrality without immediately assigning a value judgment, that's a crucial step. It reduces emotional reactivity and fosters acceptance.
Makes sense.
The sources also talk about the impact of repetitive negative judgments, those really ingrained thought patterns that constantly criticize us or others. Those can be particularly damaging.
Yeah, those ones feel like they're on autopilot sometimes. How do we start to address those?
The audiobook outlines a helpful 3-step process. First, try to objectively describe the judgment, but without using emotionally charged language. So instead of, I'm such a failure because I didn't get that promotion, maybe rephrase it to, I applied for a promotion and wasn't selected. Just the facts.
Okay, strip the emotion out.
Kind of. Second, become aware of the specific emotions that this judgment triggers. So in that case, maybe disappointment or a feeling of inadequacy. Acknowledge the feeling. And third, try to envision what your life would be like without that particular judgment. How would you feel? What actions might you take differently if that thought wasn't there?
Right. The audiobook shared the story of Alice, didn't it? And her fear about singing because she judged herself as not brave enough.
Yeah.
How did this process help her?
Yeah, Alice was constantly plagued by this self-judgment. I'll never be brave enough to be a singer. Every time she even thought about pursuing her passion, this thought would pop up and just fill her with doubt and fear. So one day she decided to try this 3-step thing. She objectively stated the judgment. She recognized the feelings it brought up: fear, inadequacy. And then she asked herself this really powerful question. What if this judgment simply wasn't true? What if I were brave enough? And that simple act of just questioning the judgment started to loosen its grip on her. She began to shift her focus towards the possibilities the joy singing could bring, rather than being defined by her fear of not being brave enough.
So by consciously identifying it, acknowledging the feeling, and then challenging its validity,
Yeah.
by imagining life without it, she started to break free. That's a really practical approach.
Okay.
Okay, now, the sources also introduced this concept of psychological distancing. What's that about?
Psychological distancing, yeah. Sometimes it's called self-distancing. It's essentially the ability to create a bit of mental space. Space between yourself and your immediate emotional experience, especially when you're feeling overwhelmed or maybe caught in a conflict. It's about shifting your perspective to get a more objective, less emotionally charged view. Like taking a step back mentally.
What are the main benefits of doing that? Why create that distance?
Well, the sources highlight several key advantages. It can lead to a clearer, more balanced understanding of difficult situations. It can enhance creativity by allowing for more flexible thinking. It improves your ability to regulate your emotions effectively. And ultimately, it helps you process and move on from past experiences that might be holding you back. And again, psychology research suggests this shift in perspective can actually alter how your brain processes emotional info, leading to a less intense response.
The ebook had that example of Kiara feeling totally overwhelmed, right?
Yeah.
How did distancing help her?
Yeah, Kiara was feeling swamped. Work deadlines, family issues, money worries, all hitting her at once. She felt like she was drowning.
Been there.
Right. So, to create some psychological distance, she used a visualization technique. She imagined herself sitting in an airplane looking down at her life from thousands of feet up.
Ah, okay.
And from that high-up perspective, her individual problems seemed smaller, less overwhelming, almost like seeing a map of her life instead of being stuck in the traffic of it. This mental distance gave her a sense of calm and allowed her to think more clearly, more strategically about how to handle each issue without feeling totally consumed by the emotion.
That's a really vivid analogy, the airplane view.
Yeah.
What are some concrete strategies we can use to practice this self-distancing day to day?
Yeah, the sources offer several practical techniques. One is just physical or temporal separation. If you're in a heated argument, for example, just taking a brief break, stepping away to cool down before continuing, that can create valuable mental space.
Right, take 5.
Exactly. Cognitive reappraisal is another powerful one. That involves consciously reinterpreting a situation in a more neutral or even positive light, like reframing a challenge as an opportunity for growth. Another interesting one is shifting your language. Instead of saying, I am so anxious, try saying to yourself, this feeling of anxiety is present. That subtle shift can create a sense of separation from the emotion itself. You're not the anxiety, you're experiencing it.
I like that. The Eisenhower matrix, the urgent, important grid, was mentioned too. How does that help create distance? Seems like a productivity tool.
It is, but it works here too. The Eisenhower matrix helps you step back from the immediate clamor of your workload and categorize tasks based on how urgent they are and how important they are.
Right, the 4 boxes.
Exactly. This gives you a broader perspective on what truly deserves your attention and energy. It stops you from getting bogged down in less significant tasks that might feel urgent but aren't actually that important. Arthur, the business owner in the example, used it to realize he was spending way too much time on urgent but not important stuff.
Okay.
He delegated them, freed up his mental space, and could focus on the more strategic, important work. It's a way of distancing yourself from that feeling of being constantly reactive, pulled in all directions.
And what about that technique of observing yourself from a distance, like you're watching a movie of your own life?
Exactly, yeah. This involves consciously imagining yourself as an outside observer in a situation, almost like you're watching a character. Sarah, in the example of a tense argument, used this. She tried to mentally step back and watch the interaction unfold.
How did that help?
It allowed her to detach a bit from her immediate emotional reactions and analyze the interaction more objectively. That distance helped her see the dynamics more clearly and choose a more constructive response rather than just getting swept away by her feelings.
The concept of future self-observation sounds really intriguing too. How can imagining our future selves help us let go now?
Right. This technique involves vividly imagining your future self looking back at your current behavior, your current choices. You ask yourself, how will my future self see what I'm doing right now? Do these actions align with my long-term goals and values? This can give you a broader understanding of the consequences of your current attachments or habits, and it can motivate you to let go of behaviors or thought patterns that aren't really serving your future well-being.
The examples were powerful. The Olympic athlete visualizing future success instead of dwelling on potential failures.
Yeah.
And Andrew picturing his future self enjoying a vacation as motivation to stop his impulsive spending now.
Yes. It's about creating that temporal distance, that longer view. It allows you to see beyond the immediate gratification or discomfort and connect with your larger aspirations. It can be a really effective way to let go of habits or attachments that are hindering your progress towards where you ultimately want to be.
Okay, wow. We've covered controlling what we can, being present, thinking without judgment, creating mental space. But what about those inner voices, the ones that can be so critical and make it really hard to let go of past mistakes or, perceived flaws? The sources talked about the inner critic and self-compassion.
Ah, yes, the inner critic. That often harsh, judgmental voice inside us. It can be a huge obstacle to letting go, can't it?
Definitely.
It's constantly evaluating us, often unfairly, and it can keep us stuck in these cycles of self-doubt and blame. The very first step in dealing with it is simply becoming aware of it, noticing its presence, its characteristic patterns when it pipes up.
Okay, so just recognizing it first. Once we do, what practical steps can we take to respond in a healthier way, not just get beaten down by it?
Right. The sources outline a few key steps. First, when you notice the inner critic is active, try to become aware of the specific emotions it triggers, maybe shame, guilt, fear. Then try to connect those emotions to the underlying unmet needs that might be driving the criticism, maybe a need for acceptance or belonging or competence. What's it really about?
Okay.
Next, practice reframing the internal dialogue with empathy. Instead of just believing the critical voice, try to understand where it might be coming from. Perhaps it's like a misguided attempt to protect you from failure or rejection.
Protect you by criticizing you.
Kinda, yeah. In a warped way. Then, challenge the negative thoughts with factual evidence. Ask yourself, is this really true? Or is it based on assumptions or old experiences? Show compassion towards the critic itself, recognizing it's often rooted in fear.
Right.
And finally, respond to your underlying emotional needs in a more constructive way. If the critic is saying you're not good enough, perhaps the real need is for connection or self-acceptance. So find a healthy way to meet that need.
So it's about learning to see the inner critic, not as this objective truth teller, but maybe as a misguided protector, and then responding to ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer a friend.
Exactly. Cultivating self-compassion, treating yourself with kindness, understanding, acceptance, especially when you're struggling or you've made mistakes, that's a powerful antidote to the harshness of the inner critic.
Yeah.
This shift in inner dialogue creates a safer space to acknowledge your experiences without getting trapped in self-blame. And that makes it much easier to learn from the past and let go of all that self-recrimination.
That leads really nicely into the distinction the sources made between perfectionism and excellentism. How does aiming for excellence rather than perfection help us let go?
Right. Perfectionism, with its relentless, often totally unrealistic pursuit of flawlessness, it can be incredibly draining. It often leads straight to anxiety, fear of failure, procrastination, burnout.
Yeah.
It sets this unattainable standard that makes it really difficult to accept imperfections in ourselves and in the world. Excellentism, on the other hand, is about setting high standards, striving for quality, but maintaining a more balanced and realistic perspective. Crucially, acknowledging that mistakes are a natural part of learning.
So what are the key mindset differences there between the perfectionist and the excellentist?
Well, someone striving for excellence tends to have a more positive, growth-oriented mindset. They see mistakes not as catastrophes, but as valuable learning opportunities, chances to contribute to continuous improvement. They embrace the process of learning and development rather than being solely fixated on some flawless outcome. And interestingly, research suggests that people striving for excellence often experience higher levels of healthy anxiety, conscientiousness, intrinsic motivation, but without being paralyzed by that fear of imperfection that often plagues perfectionists.
The example in the sources comparing how they might react to getting a B grade really showed that difference, didn't it?
Yes, exactly. The perfectionist might see a B as a major failure, leading to self-criticism, discouragement. The excellentist, while maybe initially disappointed, would likely analyze what led to the B, identify areas for improvement, and use it as motivation for the future without letting it totally derail their self-esteem or future efforts. They get that progress, not flawless execution, is the real goal.
So how can we actively shift our mindset, move away from perfectionism towards that healthier pursuit of excellence?
Well, the sources suggest starting by honestly asking yourself, do I tend to hold myself to impossibly high standards? Do I engage in harsh self-criticism? Just notice that at first.
Okay.
Then, consciously remind yourself that progress and effort are ultimately more valuable than hitting some unattainable ideal of perfection. Actively embrace the learning process. See challenges and mistakes as opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Practice self-compassion when you inevitably fall short. And make a deliberate effort to acknowledge and celebrate even small wins, those little incremental improvements along the way. It's about shifting focus from the elusive perfect to the tangible reality of progress and learning.
Okay, wow. We've really delved into our internal world. Let's shift focus a bit now to our relationship with the external world.
Yeah.
The sources introduced non-attachment and interdependence. How did these ideas connect to letting go?
Right. Non-attachment in this context, it isn't about becoming indifferent or like emotionally detached from everything and everyone.
Okay, good clarification.
Yeah. Instead, it's about releasing our need to tightly control or cling to or possess things, whether that's material stuff, specific outcomes, or even our relationships sometimes. It's about recognizing the impermanent, ever-changing nature of life
Yeah.
and learning to embrace that fluidity, which actually brings greater inner freedom and peace.
Why is this tendency towards attachment often such a barrier to letting go? Why do we cling so tightly?
Often we get attached to things because we mistakenly believe they define our worth or give us a sense of security. We might cling to possessions, relationships, even rigid beliefs because deep down we fear losing them. And that fear of loss can then drive our choices, create this constant state of anxiety as we try desperately to hold on to things that are inherently transient. Unhealthy attachment often comes from seeking external validation instead of cultivating a strong sense of self-worth from within.
Linda's story about solo travel really illustrated this, didn't it? Finding yourself by letting go of the familiar.
Absolutely. By stepping way outside her comfort zone, releasing her attachment to her usual routines, her social circles, Linda opened herself up to totally new experiences and, importantly, unexpected discoveries about herself.
Yeah.
She found this newfound sense of inner resourcefulness, even joy in the uncertainty. It showed how letting go of the need for security in the familiar can actually lead to significant personal growth and unexpected happiness.
The concepts of self as context and sometimes thinking were also mentioned for cultivating non-attachment. Can you explain those a bit?
Sure, self as context comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. It suggests that instead of rigidly identifying with our thoughts and feelings, I am anxious, we can learn to see ourselves as the container, the space in which these experiences arise and pass.
Like the sky and the weather.
Exactly like the sky and the weather. Thoughts and feelings are like passing weather patterns. They come and go, but they don't define the sky itself, which is your awareness. And Stephen Hayes, one of the ACT founders, talks about sometimes thinking. This is really simple but powerful. You just add the word sometimes to rigid self-statements. So I am anxious becomes I am anxious sometimes. I can't do that becomes I can't do that sometimes.
Ah, interesting.
This simple linguistic shift introduces flexibility. It acknowledges the impermanent nature of our experiences and self-perceptions. It fosters more self-compassion and openness to change, helping us detach from the idea of a fixed, unchanging self.
And how does interdependence fit in? Recognizing we're connected to others. That might seem counterintuitive to letting go.
Yeah, it might seem that way, but interdependence is about recognizing and appreciating our interconnectedness. Understanding we aren't just isolated individuals floating around. It involves choosing collaboration, mutual support over excessive competition, or that hyper-independent, I don't need anyone attitude. When we recognize our reliance on others and value these connections, it can actually help us let go of the need to control everything ourselves. We can trust in the support and contributions of others. It challenges that illusion of complete self-sufficiency and fosters a sense of shared responsibility, which can be quite freeing.
How does being open to feedback connect to both non-attachment and interdependence?
Well, both non-attachment and interdependence require a certain humility, right? A willingness to let go of rigid self-perceptions. Being open to feedback, even when it's tough to hear.
Yeah.
It allows us to see ourselves and our actions from different angles. This can help us detach from overly positive or negative self-images and recognize areas where we can grow. And in the context of interdependence, being receptive to feedback is absolutely crucial for effective collaboration and building strong relationships.
Like Helen in the writing group example.
Exactly. Helen initially felt defensive about criticism, but eventually learned to embrace it. Letting go of the need to be right all the time and being open to others' perspectives not only improved her writing, but also strengthened her connections within the group. It served both purposes.
So the ability to hold multiple perspectives seems really key here for both letting go and connecting.
Absolutely. Actively seeking out and considering diverse viewpoints, especially when you're facing challenges or making decisions, it just broadens your understanding. It helps break down rigid ways of thinking.
Right.
It encourages a more flexible, nuanced outlook, allowing us to let go of our own limited perspective sometimes and appreciate that other viewpoints might also be valid. Both Helen's writing group and Sarah's marketing campaign example, where incorporating diverse customer feedback led to a better strategy, really highlight the value of embracing multiple perspectives.
Okay, switching gears slightly but still relevant in our modern world. We're constantly bombarded with information, media. The sources touched on conscious media consumption as part of letting go. How does that fit?
Yeah, it's a big one today. Mindless consumption of media, whether it's social media, news, just endless scrolling, can significantly contribute to mental clutter, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed.
Definitely.
It can also fuel those negative comparisons, that sense of inadequacy, making it harder to feel content with our own lives and let go of needing external validation. So, conscious media consumption is about being deliberate, being intentional about the media we engage with.
Why is it important to understand why we're reaching for our devices? What's the motivation?
Because it helps us distinguish, right?
Yeah.
Are we using media for genuine connection or learning or enjoyment, which can be great? Or are we using it as a form of avoidance, distraction, maybe emotional numbing, which can be pretty detrimental? Dr. Steven Rosenberg talks about this understanding whether our digital engagement is truly fostering meaningful connections or just adding to a sense of isolation and overwhelm.
7 Yearson's Learn, Connect, Joy rule sounds like a useful filter for that.
It's a very practical guideline, yeah. Before you engage, ask yourself, will this help me learn something useful? Will it help me connect with others meaningfully? Or will it bring me genuine joy? If the stuff you're consuming consistently leaves you feeling drained or anxious or inadequate, that's a pretty strong sign it might be time to rethink those habits.
Setting personal boundaries with media seems absolutely crucial then.
Absolutely. This means becoming aware of your personal triggers, what kind of content sends you down a rabbit hole, consciously selecting content that supports your well-being rather than undermining it, and setting clear time limits.
Yeah.
Simple strategies work. Curating your feeds, unfollow or mute accounts that evoke negative feelings. Setting specific times for checking notifications instead of being constantly interrupted. Even designating media-free zones or times in your day, like maybe no phones at the dinner table or an hour before bed. It's about regaining control over your attention and energy.
So being proactive and intentional, not just passively absorbing whatever the algorithms throw at us.
Exactly. It involves pausing just for a second, reflecting before you reach for your phone or turn on the TV. Ask yourself, what do I truly want to gain from this? The sources suggest practical steps like noticing which content makes you feel bad, actively unfollowing or muting those sources, taking regular breaks, reflecting on your values when choosing content, maybe even asking trusted friends for positive recommendations. It's about curating a digital environment that supports you rather than detracts.
Okay, finally, the sources highlighted this powerful link between adopting a growth mindset and our ability to embrace change, which seems essential for letting go of the past. Can you elaborate on that connection?
Yeah, the growth mindset, that fundamental belief that your abilities, your intelligence aren't fixed but can be developed through dedication and hard work, it's intrinsically linked to letting go.
How so?
Because it reframes challenges and setbacks. Instead of seeing them as fixed limitations or proof of failure, you see them as opportunities for learning and growth. This perspective makes it much easier to release the fear of making mistakes or not being good enough, which often holds us back from trying new things and letting go of old, unhelpful patterns.
So if I hit a roadblock trying something new, a growth mindset helps me see it as like, okay, what can I learn here? Rather than, see, I knew I couldn't do it.
Precisely. And embracing change, which is just an inherent part of life, right? It becomes less daunting when you have a growth mindset because you view change as an opportunity for development, not just a threat. It allows you to release outdated beliefs about yourself, let go of negative self-talk that might be holding you back.
Right.
The sources contrasted a fixed mindset where maybe a poor grade means I'm not smart with the growth mindset, where the same grade is seen as valuable feedback, motivation to learn more effectively next time.
The concept of the valley of despair in the change process was really insightful. How does knowing about that help us keep going and let go of old ways?
Ah, the valley of despair. Yeah, it describes that inevitable dip in motivation and confidence that often hits when you're in the middle of a big change, starting a new habit, pursuing a tough goal.
Hmm.
It's that point where the initial buzz wears off, progress feels slow, and you're really tempted to just slide back into old, comfortable patterns. Recognizing that this dip is a normal, predictable stage,
Okay.
that it's situated between that initial informed pessimism and the eventual informed optimism that can give you hope and resilience. It helps you understand the discomfort is likely temporary. And by pushing through this valley, you're much more likely to reach the rewards of success and fulfillment. It encourages you to let go of the expectation that change should be immediate and effortless.
It usually isn't.
Yeah.
So what are some practical strategies to overcome that fear of change and build a stronger growth mindset?
Well, the sources suggest actively tackling your underlying fears about failure and criticism. Consciously reframe your beliefs about them. Visualize positive outcomes, really picture success to build anticipation and motivation. Break down big, overwhelming changes into smaller, manageable steps. Just focus on the next small step.
Okay.
Focus your attention on the present moment and the immediate action you can take. Celebrate those small wins along the way to reinforce positive momentum. And crucially, practice self-compassion when you inevitably stumble. Be kind to yourself.
The technique of brain dumping was also mentioned as a way to support embracing change. How does just getting everything out of our heads help us let go?
Brain dumping, yeah. Championed by David Allen. It's basically about offloading all the thoughts, ideas, worries, to-dos that are just swirling around in your mind onto paper or maybe a digital doc.
Just get it out.
Just get it out. This process of externalizing your mental clutter can significantly reduce that feeling of being overwhelmed. It improves your ability to focus. All those mental open loops, unresolved thoughts, they consume a ton of mental energy, right? Yeah, and that makes it hard to embrace new ideas or let go of past preoccupations.
So it's like literally creating space in our minds by writing it all down.
Exactly. The exercise is simple. Set a timer, grab paper or your notes app, and just write down absolutely everything that comes to mind. No censoring, no editing, just dump it all out.
Okay.
And then, the sources emphasize, it's important to keep and regularly review these brain dumps, maybe in a dedicated journal or system. This lets you track progress, uncover recurring patterns or insights, and refine your strategies for letting go of what's no longer serving you: unfinished tasks, nagging worries, outdated goals. It creates the sense of clarity and control that can be incredibly liberating.
Wow, this has been such a comprehensive exploration. It really feels like we've covered a lot of ground. To kind of bring it all together, what would you say are the most crucial takeaways from this deep dive into the art of letting go?
I think the overarching message really is that letting go isn't just a single event like flipping a switch. It's an ongoing active process. It requires self-awareness, intention, and practice.
Right. It's a skill.
It's a skill, exactly. It involves understanding that fundamental difference between what you can control and what you can't. Cultivating a greater sense of presence right here, right now, becoming aware of and actively addressing those negative thought patterns, and extending compassion and forgiveness, importantly, towards yourself as well as others.
And these are all, like you said, practical tools, things our listener can actually start to incorporate into their lives starting today to cultivate more peace, more mental clarity, and that genuine emotional resilience we talked about.
Precisely, they're actionable steps.
So for you, our listener, I want to leave you with this thought. Can you identify just one thing today, could be big, could be small, that you can consciously choose to let go of? Maybe it's a lingering resentment, a critical self-judgment you keep hitting yourself with, or maybe a need to control a situation that's really outside your hands. Just take a moment later today. Consider how that simple act of release, of just letting it go, might shift your perspective or maybe create space for something new and more positive in your life.
Step into your greatness, let it shine oh so bright. I am worthy VIP, gonna take you to new heights. Turn the volume up, let's ignite your soul's delight. Join the journey now, everything gonna be alright. Hey, hey, you know you're worthy all day. Stand tall, feel the love come your way. VIP every single day. Let's celebrate, it's your time to sway. Unlock your power, let Let your spirit take flight. I am worthy VIP, beaming light into the night. Feel the magic spark, it's a beautiful sight. Here to cheer you on, life shining a new light.